All right, so this is just going to be a really quick video about another repair. I am having to replace the outside vent cover and just put a new one on here. I have the new one down below. Right now I'm just taking out the screws and getting ready to pry this cover. Now, once I have the cover off, you can see this particular cover was only sealed with butyl tape. So I'm just going to take a paint scraper here and kind of work my way under all of this and clean all this material up, get that scraped out here. If you have a cover that was sealed on, you may need to do a little bit more work in terms of, like a razor knife or something like that to clean off any old caulk or die-core sealant, depending on what you've got in there. In my case, it looks pretty easy, but when I reinstall this, although I will put butyl tape on the underside, I think I am also probably going to put some die-core or some Hexcel RTV sealant, some clear exterior grade sealant, especially along the top edge, just to make sure I get a good... All right, I'm sorry I didn't get a very good video of the whole process of this, but here you can see the new vent cover installed, and it goes on pretty easily. The only thing you really have to pay attention to is that there are screws on the outside and screws on the inside, and that top cover there is basically a flap that opens up to give you access to the rest of the screw holes. So once you get the thing mounted in there, you've got your butyl tape on the back. You pretty much just slide it in, screw it down. The tape should compress and squeeze out a little bit. That's a good sign. That means that it's getting a good seal all around. And if you're like me, you'll probably run one last bead of a nice sealant across the top just to be on the safe side so rainwater sheds off really easily. Just a silicone exterior sealant is typically good enough. I use a thing called Hexcel, which is a really soft, stays flexible and pliable material so that as things are expanding and contracting, it doesn't loosen up. But otherwise, that's really about it. Takes about 10 minutes, all total, including scraping time, if you kind of get in there and get it done. And that's about it, about a $20 repair, so not too... All right, now I did say earlier in this segment that this sealant was Lexcel, and I thought I would add just one last little clip here. It is actually Lexcel, not Hexcel. And this is a silastic sealant. In this case, this is a clear elastic sealant. It's a very great product to keep around. This stuff doesn't really go bad in the container, so provided you keep it sealed, it's not like caulk where it'll eventually get hard and kind of work its way through here, and eventually you'll lose the whole tube. This stuff stays pliable even in the tube. You can keep this around your toolbox for years. It's got a really nice thick container here. It is a little on the expensive side, but I definitely think it's worth keeping in any RV toolbox, because if you just need a quick repair and you don't want to be hauling out butyl tape and die-core, this thing will get you through. The other product I don't have in my hand here to show you, but is definitely a must-have, is some Eternabond tape. If you have a new camper, you probably don't need to keep this in your camper. It's just something to maybe have on hand in the garage for doing work on like roof vents and stuff like that. But if you're going to be on the road a lot and maybe you're full timing and or if you have an older camper, I would definitely recommend having at least a couple of feet of Eternabond because that stuff is like an instant emergency repair. Middle of a rainstorm, you can slap that over a leak and it'll seal right up and it'll stay there pretty much permanently. So these two products together I found very useful. They are not the only products that I use. I do use the butyl tape and I do use the die-core, both the sag and non-sag or self-leveling, whatever you want to call it. But definitely I'm going to use this for this. And here you can see how that turned out. It's a little bit messy, but there's really no point smoothing this. Nobody's ever going to see it. You'll notice that I only run a bead across the top, and I don't really fuss about things like this. This is a hinge. It is meant to be left open, and you don't want to be filling that spot in there because otherwise you'll never get this thing open to service it. Also, you'll notice that I don't run a bead down on the sides here. It's not necessary. The butyl tape's going to serve that just fine, and you really want rainwater to shed and run down here, particularly down off the bottom. You never want to seal the bottoms of these things up completely tight, because if any moisture does get in there, and it can come from the inside, it doesn't have to come from outside, but any moisture, condensation, humidity, anything like that that gets in there needs a way to get out, or it'll start rotting and mildewing inside there. So down here on the bottom, I've left this just kind of open and letting it drain out the way it's supposed to.